Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings with EJSLLC.com. And this is another video in my RHCSA practice session series where I'm going through some of the concepts within the objectives, talking through them, doing some examples, and just generally seeing if I feel like I know what I'm talking about ahead of the RHCSA exam. I want to remind you these aren't necessarily intended to be authoritative information, but I am trying to give as accurate of information as possible, just to hopefully show that I have learned my material for the exam. Before I dive in, I want to remind you, if you enjoyed the content of the video, make sure you click like, and also click like on the video, that is, and also feel free to subscribe to the channel and click the bell when you do, so you can be aware when new content comes available. The objective for this video is under the Managed Security section of the RHCSA objectives, and this is going to be the list and identify SELinux file and process context. So the file context I have some experience with, and I'm going to be doing an example with HTTPD. And also I'm going to be looking at the restore default file context objective as well, because these two are pretty closely related. As far as process context, the tutorials that I've went through preparing for RHCSA really didn't talk about individual process context, and so I'm going to need to do a little bit of research just within Red Hat documentation to see if I can get some information about that. I don't think that of course I'm pausing for a moment, probably not good to do for my YouTube video, but it seems like kind of the point with this, especially with Boolean settings and such, maybe not especially with Boolean settings, but it seems like at the RHCSA level there's more of a focus on do your directories and such and files have the right context with them. Now of course I haven't taken the exam, there's no way that I can know that, or even if I took the exam, I'm sure I'd be under NDA and I wouldn't be able to discuss it. But it seems like a lot of the different training materials that I've looked at focus much more on the file context. So that being said, let us SSH into our server here. Now this is a minimal install for the server, and I did this specifically because there's a chance that you'll need to install the utility to do what we need to do. And the utility we're going to use is something called SEmanage. And before I go on, let me just do SEmanage-H. I think it's going to complain that it can't be found. So earlier, just in my training for RHCSA, this will bother me because I would try to do SELinux stuff. And, I need SEmanage, and I could never remember the exact package name. And even then, I think it's like Python policy core utils or core policy utils -python. Even now I can't remember it. So if I have to install this package, what I would do to figure this out is yum provides SEmanage. And of course provides plural SEmanage. And this I've actually learned recently about yum, that this really is checking internal database about this. I believe there's a different command, which I'll show you in just a moment, that that would probably be a little bit better command to use for this. We'll give this just a moment to do its thing. Hopefully it shouldn't take too terribly long. I have a decent network. scmanage. Yep, well that's probably why. So I'm going to do what provides, and then because with this we are asking it whatever file path ending in SEmanage, we want to know what packages it has, and it's the policy core utils -python -utils is the utility that we need from that, and it's in the base OS repo. So once we install this, I'm going to cheat and copy from the GUI there, which I guess isn't cheating. RHCSA just cares about you getting it done, not necessarily how you do it. Well, within reason. I'm sure I can't consult Dr. Google during the exam. So we'll sudo yum install -y. I know for a fact that's going to be the thing. And it's waiting for process ID to finish. All right, well, while that waits, let's open another tab. We'll do another SSH session. I've seen that happen before. And actually the process that it's waiting for, it's either yum or DNF. I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, there it goes. So, oh, didn't need to do that anyway. So we'll close this. Yes, I want to close that terminal. And now, I'm going to go ahead and sudo into root, because you pretty much need to be root to, oh, you're going to see my super secret password for my little lab stuff here. I can see myself now. My little walled off lab has already been compromised. No, I'm kidding. But if I were to do scmanage-h, this, by the way, -h is a great help if you're in the exam and you need, kind of a quick refresher on, oh, this is how I do stuff. What I wanted to show you, what we'll be working with in this video is fcontext, and I'll do another video on booleans, or booleans, I've heard some people pronounce it. But you can set SELinux context for ports, for different network interfaces. There's a ton to SELinux, so don't think that the couple of videos that I'm making in this series for the RHCSA are like the be-all, end-all resource for SELinux, because it's not. There's a lot you can do with this. But one thing that I find myself finding useful with scmanage is finding out what configurations we already have. So what I mean by this is, let's install Apache. I mean, Yum can't read my mind and know that I want to install Apache. Alright, that shouldn't take too terribly long. Hopefully not. It's Apache. Going to wonder what's going on. There we go. It's odd. I swear my network's usually pretty good. Alright, so we have Apache installed, and we're going to look at because this is list and identify SELinux file and process context. We're going to look at the var www directory. We're going to pass ls the -z flag. Z, now we'll do lz, so we have some other things with it. Z gives us the file context, and so within var www, which is a directory, kind of a default directory for HTTPD, we see that these two directories use, and if I get this wrong, by all means put it in the comments, but we have the system context, like an object type, and then what I'm most interested in right now is the file context. And I'm sure there's configuration out there that says what particular system calls are allowed for these contexts. I don't know where that is, but I'm sure it's there. But we're interested in these particular file contexts because if, let's say that we want to store our web files not in the HTML directory, we want to use a different directory. Well, in order to actually make that work, we're going to need to alter the context of that directory to match this HTTPD sys content T. Because otherwise, even if you set file permissions and directory permissions correctly, SELinux is going to prevent HTTPD's process from being able to use that directory. And as I'm thinking about it, the whole process context, looking at this objective, it says list and identify SELinux file and process context. It does not say actually configuring process context. So I'm going to take that literally, and I am fairly sure within the PS command, the Z option, Z tends to be like the SELinux option for commands. And I'm pretty sure Z is going to give us SELinux, but let's take a look at man PS real quick. There's always a ton of stuff here. Some of the examples I've seen, and I tend to use the POSIX without the or I guess the Unix options without the dash, or is it, which one's without the dash? That's the one I usually use, PSAUX, right? And what I'm looking for is E, because I've seen E be used along with this. If I were to just search for the letter E, it's probably going to take forever to find some. There it was. So environment after the command, and I know Z does SELinux. that I will look for man ps z space m identical to z. All right, so if I were to do ps ez, how about that? And let's just do head, get the first few. Oh, that's a ton of stuff. Man, that was much more than I was expecting. I wonder if I were to do psaux, that gives us that. Let's see what happens if I do auxz. All right, there we go. So that's giving us the system U, system kernel T. That's giving us the process context for the SELinux context for the processes that are running here. And that's a ton of information. So let's do let's just grep for bash. There we go. So here are some bash processes. We see the process IDs, and the Z is giving us the SELinux context for that. I can't tell you what unconfined means, other than this is an SELinux context, but for this particular objective, for the process side of things, this is probably sufficient. But again, between now and my exam, I'm going to look at Red Hat documentation just to see if there's any kind of obvious things I think I will need to know for setting SELinux context for processes. The more I think about it, I'm not sure if we really would do that, because pretty much everything on the exam needs to persist on a reboot. And if you're setting this for processes as they're running, like if I set this for bash, unless there's some kind of default thing that says always run bash for this particular context, which there might be, then I'm not 100% sure how we would do that with persistence. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to show you with SELinux as far as listing and identifying context, let me clear my screen here, is, and this will get into the restore default file context. The syntax for setting this, like let's say, let me go ahead and make, and this is similar to an example I did in another video. Let me make my little directory here, web, and lslz. Of course, this we need to do that. So there's our web, right? And we need to know how to change the SELinux context. You can use chcon, changecon. I would not. That doesn't persist, and pretty much all tutorials I've seen, some will use changecon, but we want to do this for persistence, and it's pretty easy to do. So I would suggest using the method I'm about to use. And what that's going to be is scmanage, A for add, the type of thing that we're altering, which is going to be f context, T for the HTTPD context type, whatever the context is, and then the directory. So, and I promise you whatever is not a SELinux context. But what we're going to want is that context to I'm not sure if inherit is necessarily the right word, but we want the things in the subdirectories of web, as you know, you're building out your web application or whatever, to have the right context. So there's a particular syntax for it, and what I typically will do for this, scmanage f context, because this is the file context that we're working, -l. L, if I were to hit enter here, that's everything, and that's a ton of stuff that it just flew through, and you can scroll through and see all sorts of, like, the way SELinux is configured for the var spool cups directory. This syntax here is what I will be looking for, but it's all files and it gets this particular context. So if I was wanting to figure out on the fly, and I didn't have this memorized, the context to set this web directory to make it work with HTTPD, is I would grep to var www HTML. And notice that this comes back with the SELinux configurations for these directories. And we see almost all of them are HTTPD read-write content. If I were to do just var www, we're going to get even more. but you will see, and this is all regular expressions. I think there's just var www. I mean, that's just httpd sys. But the point being is if you get stuck, you can grep for stuff that's there and use that as a guide. For example, I'm going to be doing web, and then I want this little syntax here, the parentheses, / dot star parentheses question mark, which basically tells this anything that's var www html and everything after that. We want to have whatever particular context it is. So this is where I would get that from. And then to set it, we'll go ahead and do read write content. Even though usually I just do httpd sys content, not do read write, but I guess it depends on what the objective is asking us for. So I will do SEManage, adding. This is a f context, t, the context that I want, and then web, and I do our little configuration. Oops. You have to do this in quotation marks. Now I remember that getting me before. So I thought, what did I do there? Error for one of the arguments. So I guess this is real live troubleshooting for the exam. F context. I don't think we're not modifying a context, we're adding it. That's odd. Well, when in doubt, check the man pages. Maybe there's an example here at the bottom. Fairly sure that's what I typically do. Unless I need to do f context first. That might be it. SEManage f context at. There we go. That was it. Oh, wait. This must be it. It has to be a file or device type. That's why I probably do just httpd sys content t. Nope. What is going on? Yep, now I see. Some of you that are watching this and are knowledgeable of SELinux are going, yeah, it's obvious, it's right there. We're going to go back to the read write content, and I'm going to get rid of subject U, object R, because those are not F context. That's something else. This is what I want. And I say that and watch it error out again, but no, it will not. So there we are. Now, if I were to do ls-z, we see that the context is still there because what we have done is altered the default configurations for SELinux. And so what we have to do is basically make SELinux reread or relabel rather the this directory. And to do that, we're going to be restoring the default file context for this directory. And that default is now this thing that we configured. So to do that, we're going to do restore con, and normally I will do -r because I want this to recurse through it. I like doing v just to where it tells me what's going on, /web, and it shows that the context was changed. Let's confirm that, and we see that the context was changed. So when you're working with SELinux, that is what we're going to do to be able to add that context, make it persist, and then change it right when we need versus change con. So if we want to take that away, all right, so let's see what we need to do for that. I believe it is -r, but let's make sure. Oh, I want SEManage f context, not cotext. Context. And let's see if I'm right here. Oh, it's delete. It is not R. My bad. So if I wanted to take this away, SEManage F context delete, and I think I can just do the directory. So let's try that. I don't think I have to do the entire string. I might have to though. No errors yet. Okay, so let us SEManage F context -L grep for web. And there are things that say web, but we know none of these match that directory. And then if I were to do restore con rv web, it changes that back to, since there is no configured context, it's going to give it basically a default context. ls z web, and we see it's back to its original context. Remember, the -R with restore con is for recursive. If I had my little index.html file there, that's why I would use the -R. Otherwise, just doing it without -R is perfectly fine. So that pretty much covers the listing and identifying different file contexts. We looked at how to identify the process context, and also restoring default file context, which is what you would need to do if you make a change to SELinux configuration that if you make persistent changes to it and don't want to reboot your system to be able to see that happening. I hope you found this useful. If you did, make sure you click like on the video. Also subscribe, ring the bell when you do, so you can be aware of when new content comes available. Don't hesitate to ask questions in the comments. As I have time, I'll try to answer what I can, and if I get something wrong, by all means comment there so both myself and others that are watching the video can learn as well. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.